welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker, and we're going to be looking at a tea today. It's going to be a tea that may be new to some people. It's from Jiangxi Province in China. There are so many teas from China, and if you feel like that your experience of tea is just a simple green tea, there's really a whole world waiting for you. And so hopefully this will be a tea that you consider exploring, or if it's not good, as we find out, if we find out that it's not good, I should say, one that you may want to take a pass at or pass on. So we're going to go ahead and get this started, though, and to do this, I'm using very simple, easily reproduced equipment. You could find this fairly easily. Make your own set here, so that you can get the same or very similar results to what I'm getting. So I'm going to get out a regular old teaspoon. I'm going to scoop out my tea here. And I want enough. This is about a 4-ounce gaiwan, a Chinese style for preparing tea. And I want enough to really kind of cover the bottom, say 1.5 inches diameter. Now when I put that in, that really covers most of the bottom. I'm going to add just a pinch more, because I prefer teas to be stronger, to bring out everything that they can, and get the full experience. Now, when you find the way you want to adjust as you come to experience your tea, and you'll want to find that level of strength that you're comfortable with. You want to find that level of intensity that you prefer, and so you will want to adjust as you learn more. Now, I've put in enough water so that when I put my lid on, I'm actually going to push away some of these little peat particles or pieces of leaf from the edge, so that when I put my lid on, I've got a nice watertight seal. Water has risen above the rim of the lid, prevents air from getting in there and changing the color, really. So while that's steeping, let's talk a little bit about this tea. This is from Mark T. Wendell Tea Company, based in Concord, Massachusetts. Let's see, this is their Cloud and Mist green tea. You can find a 4-ounce size like this, 1/4 pound, for $12.75. It is from Jiangxi, which is the original source or location for Cloud and Mist, or you may hear Yun Wu is the Chinese words. Yun meaning cloud, Wu meaning mist or fog. And so this is the tea that we're going to be looking at. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the 3 parts of the tea, so that you know when you're checking out a tea, when you're comparing this tea versus that, what kind of characteristics should you keep an eye out for. So we've got a spoon, and let me just get out. Well, before I get into that, I better give it a smell. Shake it up a little bit. Some aromas that came out for me include things like chestnut. There is something that is definitely kind of toasty, warm, heat that can get into a tea that's been roasted or heated, can get out some of those kind of nutty notes. Combined with that, there's an herby or a vegetal type of sweetness that really comes out to me as kind of like a sorghum. It's a sweet, not quite molasses, but more of a, how would you describe that? More of a grassy type of sweetness to it. Thick, heavy sweetness, though. So that's the aroma. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these leaves. I'm going to get out my spoon here and just kind of get a little sample here in my hand. Now, one of the first things I notice about this tea is the color. This is a more of a greenish gray. So it looks like it's had more heat applied to it. It's not a bright, young, tender-looking green. Again, I have seen gunpowder teas that are similar in that kind of greenish gray area. Looking at these leaves, I get various sizes. I'm getting some that are about 1 inch in length and feel pretty thick. I mean, they look pretty thick. It looks like, a more mature, wider leaf that's been rolled up. so that they are kind of wiry, twisted along that middle vein of the leaf. And when I look for leaf sets, I get some here and there. For example, the leaf set there. A lot of these pieces also are shorter. A lot of them become shorter than 1 inch. Indications of tips or needles. You know, the tenderest part. If they are there, they're wrapped up pretty tightly. They're not really that obvious just yet, because there's also what looks to be leaf portions or sections of leaves that have been, you know, chopped, or I should say broken, so that they don't represent a full-size leaf. Let's put that away for a moment and let's get ready to pour. A pitcher like this is very useful for serving, especially if you're going to serve more than one cup. If you're tasting with others, it's always a good idea to have some kind of serving pot like this. I like to have one that's pretty large, easier to handle. I'm going to pour right through there, and the way I did that was I simply took my lid, kind of leaned it over to the side, middle finger and thumb on the edge of the bowl, because that's the coolest part. That shouldn't have too much heat on it. My index finger holds the lid in place, and I've let enough of a gap that I can get my liquid to come through, hopefully without a lot of leaves going through. So that took care of that. Let's go ahead and set this out of the way for just a moment, because I do want to talk a little bit about this wet leaf. Let's give it a smell. Some of the first things that really stood out, or came out, were there's a green bean component. It just feels like a green vegetable. It's got a very think of green beans. You know, they've been boiling in the pot for a while. There's that significant bean element combined with the green pod type aspect there as well. There's a little bit more than that that's coming out now as it cools a little bit more. It's coming off a little bit sweeter, a little bit more buttery type of aspect to it. So, and this is a bit more of a fresher, also still green bean, but it's getting a little bit more fresher. It's getting a little bit cooler. It's getting a little more mouth watery, causing my mouth to water, because it is starting to get kind of a sense of juiciness to it. So those are positive notes. Let's go ahead and keep trying to put that away before I've really looked at my leaves. I want to pull out a few leaves, and as we got an indication from the dry leaf, there are sections here that leaves that don't look like they got the full extent of the leaf. Looks like a little bit has kind of broken off here or there, but for the most part, that's a full intact leaf. It's about an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch there. Let's see what else I do find now they're more easily recognized. The needles or tips. There's one that very delicate, tender, hasn't fully opened up to be a full leaf yet. What else do we have? I also find I'm digging around because there are lots of quite a bit of leaf portions. Let me pull out. There are several tips, and I'm going to just kind of estimate that in this steep there were, at most, looks like 10% of the leaf, of the content here is tip, and yeah, just more of these leaf portions, sections, pieces here. Okay, that should be enough. I'm going to add just one more there, just kind of fill it out. All right. Leaves are fairly tender. They they tear, or they feel pretty soft and supple in the hand. You can roll them around. They're not tough or leathery, the ones that I felt. So these are really young, delicate type of leaves. So that's a positive note. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about our liquor now, because we have a fairly fairly thick, heavy-looking broth here, or liquor, I should say. I'm not actually able to see through it. It's very cloudy, and actually, the color looks kind of, it's not the brightest. It's duller than some others that I've seen. Okay, let's go ahead. Smells, aromas. It's getting some of that green bean, like a little bit of butter has been kind of slathered over it. Let's go ahead and pour and give this a taste, though. Now this is probably going to be stronger than, again, I try to be consistent in preparation, giving the similar amounts of leaf quality or volume, water temperature, amount of water, steep time. Try to be fairly consistent so that and so that we can produce based on all those consistent factors. Again, not the brightest I've seen. You're gonna note the astringency here. I'm not gonna hide that from you. You're gonna note this. There's an astringent bite here. I would not classify that. There is some bitterness. I would not say that this is a bitter tea. Green teas can often have especially if you're new to green teas, they can often have what you feel to be a bitter aspect to them. But as you move along and taste more, you would notice less of that bitterness. Notice the other aspects of the tea. There is still some of that green bean aspect. There's still some sweetness. This is there's a bit of something kind of asparagus sweet. So you've got a little bit of that asparagus type note. Maybe the tip of the asparagus that has a sweet component to it as well. Aftertaste. You get a drying feeling in your mouth. The body is based most on that kind of drying sensation. You do feel a sweetness that kind of builds up around the inside of your cheeks. As you sit, you still get a kind of bitter aftertaste in the back, which competes. There's a sweetness there that's building up. It's trying to compete with that bitterness, but doesn't really fully win out. Okay, so when I look at this tea as a whole, my first reaction was, when I first looked at this tea and what I've seen here, this is a tea that has been fired, heated to the point that it has brought out quite a bit. It looks like these were leaves or tea leaves that maybe required more firing, were not able to stand on their own. So when you look at those components together and the results that they produce, I'm going to give this tea an 84. So come back to Walker Tea Review, where you can find teas that may be an introduction to you, or teas that you may want to pass over.